I don't think anyone will object to the nature of which we left Afghanistan. It was a mess. We left $85 billion worth of hardware, and now you hear Iran and whoever's getting their hands on it. So no doubt that we could have left a lot cleaner, no doubt. But the concept of just leaving Afghanistan or fundamentally leaving Afghanistan, I think a lot of Americans were just so sick of the fact that we're still 20 years later. How the fuck are we still in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Right? So can you appreciate at least not the manner in which we left, but the fact that we at least got out of there? Do you agree that there was at least a major appetite in America to get out of Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, so my first video, I said, I'm not saying we have to be in Afghanistan forever, but I am saying, then I went on to what I was saying. I personally believe that we should have left a small footprint in Bagram. That's my position. Do I understand why the American people were over Afghanistan? Yes. I think it's short-sighted because, just look at the Al-Qaeda coming right back into Afghanistan. Like, you need some type of base and presence, in my opinion. It's a hotbed. There's probably 3 or 4 countries where, terrorism grows, and Afghanistan is one of them, bottom line. And so I think just from a national security standpoint, we need to have a footprint. We already owned that terrain. It made a lot of sense for me. But do I acknowledge that the American people were over Afghanistan? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and when we pulled out, would we have 2,000 soldiers in Afghanistan?
We started with 2,500 on 1 April, and then we went down to 650.
So it was a minimal force, and we were keeping peace and order.
That's right. That's right. So that exactly right. With 2,500 troops, we owned Afghanistan. Yeah. And we owned Afghanistan. So the investment was 2,500 troops, and you own Afghanistan. But that was too much, right? And so that's, and you just look, I wish somebody had the stat for how many forces are in Europe right now. There's not a lot of terrorism being created in Europe. I mean, there is some, but not to the point of Afghanistan. And we probably have, 50 to 100,000 troops in Europe right now, right? So it's just, do the math. It seemed like a good return on investment for me.
Stu, this is a pretty blunt question, but there's a phrase that I think you've used as Pat, that in the Taliban, they said that, well, you guys have all the watches, but we have all the time. Like, spend the next couple decades here, buddy. Spend 50 years here, 100 years. We're not going anywhere. Yeah. Okay? But at the same time, you're talking about the United States military, Marine Corps, #1 in the world versus a bunch of sandal-footed, machete-wielding, gun-toting dudes. How the hell did we not just...
Those are AKs.
Okay. How did we not beat the shit out of them and just move on? Why was it even close?
So I think we won most tactical engagements. Now that's not all of them, obviously. But you also got to keep in mind, technology is one thing, but the most lethal weapon is a human mind. And so if I grew up in Afghanistan wearing a man dress and sandals, but all I was told, I didn't have any TV, all I was told about was the warriors that fought the Russians, and I was taught how to use an AK, and I had my buddies, and that was like the only thing in my world. I don't care how much technology you got, I'm going to bring some lethal force to bear. And the people that we had in our American propped up government in Afghanistan were not the real men. The real men were the ones that were, grew up hearing stories about fighting the Russians, and they got with their buddies and they got little gangs together and fell within the structure of the Taliban, went over to Pakistan, got some more training, and then came over and fought. And so, the Taliban was never a terrorist. And I talk about that in my book. They were the government. They were the conventional force. We displaced them. It was confusing because we were fighting a global war on terrorism in Afghanistan, but that only strictly applied to Al-Qaeda, which we cleaned up very quickly. So then we found ourselves in a position where we were going against the conventional force, the Taliban. And like you said, how you started this was they had time on their side. They were willing to wait us out. And so anyone that's willing to wait us out, if the American people get to a point where we don't want to be there anymore, then they're going to win. You can't exterminate them, right? You can keep winning tactical battles, but then it requires the American people to say, we're going to leave 2,500 in Bagram Air Base so that we can continue to pound them with air support when required.
Yeah, you're really emphatic that 2,500 troops in Bagram Air Forces and Air Base is all we really needed.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, crazier things have happened. But again, we've been doing that for the last 5 years.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.